Thank you, gentlemen. We will begin at this point with our first question, and as Deanne had mentioned to me just a second earlier to mention, these candidates tonight have not received the questions in advance. They were given the rules, they were given the setup, but the questions were not given to them. So you will be hearing them tonight respond to these questions. And so the first question to Mr. Pettigrew, beginning, deals with jobs. And it reads as follows. The unemployment rate statewide is around 5%. Yet in April 2012, LeFlore, Latimer, and Sequoyah counties had the highest unemployment rates in all of Oklahoma. As our congressman, what would you do to bring more job opportunities and prosperity to Eastern Oklahoma and our nation?
A great question. And first of all, if we're going to have people that are going to develop jobs, I think we need to elect people that have created jobs. And as I talked about in my opening statement, I've created over 60 jobs right here in the state. And obviously been a businessman for 28 years. You must be doing something right if you're in business that long. But I can give you three things very quickly. If we just undo what this president has done, you will create an economic growth rate that will transcend probably anything that we saw in the Reagan administration. Number one is you repeal the new EPA regulations. If you do that, your rock industry in this area, your coal mining in this area, your oil and gas in this area are going to obviously take off. If you repeal Obamacare, Obamacare affects 17% of our nation, of our GDP in the entire United States. Your insurance industry, your healthcare industry, we're going to be taking the umbrella of Obamacare that's hanging over them will be taken away. And then lastly, if you repeal the Dodd-Frank amendment, you're going to see banks that are willing to loan money. That's part of our problem right now is a businessman can't get a loan. Why can they not get a loan? Because Dodd-Frank just came in and basically said, look, Mr. Banker, if you want to loan the money to this guy that wants to build an awning on his street, on his business across the street, you've got to go in and do a total commercial real estate appraisal on that loan. That commercial real estate appraisal may be 15, 20% of the cost of that loan. That makes that loan unloanable. And that makes that loan undoable for both the business owner and for the banker. So three things, you just repeal those three things and our economy will take off and it will transcend all the way down to LeFlore County and every county in Oklahoma.
I think that it's important that we begin sending people to Washington with the understanding, ladies and gentlemen, that all wealth in this country is created in the private sector. Now think about that. The federal government in America creates no wealth. The federal government has only two sources of income: taxes that you and I send in, and borrowing. So if we will send people to Washington with the understanding that all wealth is created in the private sector, then we understand that job creation has to begin in the private sector. We shouldn't send people to Washington that will grow our government, because as the federal government grows, it shrinks the private sector. We know, and we've heard so many examples of the regulations that small businesses are facing, the growth of the federal government, but I think that there's a culture in Washington that it's the government that creates wealth, it's the government that's the way out in this country. We have to look across the pond to see that government is not the answer. Greece was bailed out by the European Union 6 months ago. And tonight, their unemployment rate is still 21%. Spain is on the verge of a bailout. $120 billion is what they're going to have. And their unemployment rate tonight is 23%. We can look to Europe and see that socialism does not work. Big government does not work, and it will not work here. The difference between the United States and America is that the United States of America and Europe is that we've realized our government's limited. And when we limit our government, it allows the private sector to grow. When the private sector grows, it will create jobs. And that should be the goal of every congressman, not only from this district, but from every district. Thank you.
What we do know is that every time that the federal government does something in the way of regulation, the Obamacare coming down the pike and already got parts of it implemented, we know that that's what's crushing our small business. And what's always been interesting to me is when I ran for state house and talking to people and small business owners, and we have business owners in our state house, and yet we don't seem to be doing much for our small business. And we got the same thing on the federal level. Well, why is that? No one's doing what they need to do. No one is doing the right thing. Everyone talks a good game, but why is it not getting done? We know the answers, and we all know the answers. You know, whatever answers you're going to hear from this table, you're going to say, well, that's certainly true, and that's true, and well, we need to do that. We know the answers, but the problem's not getting solved. The people are not, the elected officials are not voting the way they should be voting. They're not voting for the people. These are not rocket science answers. So why is it they're not solving the problem? Why is it they're not repealing some of this stuff? Why is it they allow the EPA to continue to do what they do? Because the only thing I can come up with is because they're more concerned about their party, their special interest in getting re-election. Do you think any major legislation is going to go through in the last 12 months before an election? Not going to happen. That's why you see what's going on right now. So it's a very valid question, but until our elected officials start voting the very morals that they claim to believe in, nothing's going to change.
I think you're going to hear variations on the same theme, so it's a good question. But certainly every dollar that the federal government consumes is a dollar taken out of the private sector. And I don't know how much more simply you can say that. We have the federal government involved in areas that it shouldn't be. Department of Education, Department of Energy, EPA all need to go. And what we're able to do if we can get the government out of the way is go back to the principle that I first talked about. That's free up the economy to do what a free market economy does. I mean, you have innovation, you have creativity, we have more patents and more PhDs coming out of this country. Everybody tries to steal our ideas because they don't come up with it themselves. If you want to see stuff reverse engineered in Vietnam and China and elsewhere, it's because the innovation came from our country. It's not lack of capability, it's the fact that you've got the federal government trying to come up with preferred outcomes. So solar energy is the solution. Let's give $500 million to Solyndra. It warps the economy. If you want to have bioethanol kinds of fuels, you've warped the economy in the food markets. So anytime the government chooses a preferred outcome, it takes away part of that free market economy, the innovation, the creativity that our marketplace comes up with. Left alone, the free market provides greater opportunity, more options, more wealth, and more jobs than any other system on the planet. So it's reducing the cost, size, and intrusiveness of government, and we'll be just fine just now.
Well, I'm glad that there's a few other folks that are coughing too with allergies, so I don't feel so bad. But, being at the end of the line of the same question, it's a lot of repeat, but we do have regulations that need to be taken out of the way. And they were mentioned, Obamacare. But one thing that we can do is our own energy sector can create jobs, not just the immediate jobs, but all the supply jobs. And North Dakota is just a perfect example of pushing back against regulations, drilling for our own energy independence, and creating jobs and lowering the unemployment rate to where everyone that wants a job is working. But talk about specifics. What are we going to do? Well, actually, what I've already done is set into place an Economic Advisory Council. I've already sought out the best and the brightest up and down the 2nd District of successful businessmen, businesswomen we're looking for as well, and trying to find out what solutions they can provide for the district. What have they done to be successful, and how can we get government out of the way so that they and businesses just like them can succeed? The answers are not in Washington, the answers are right here at home.